So I will entertain a motion to approve the weekly warrant in the amount of $141,964.01.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to vote to exempt from Section 20 of Chapter 268A of the general laws the contracts and amounts for individuals listed below contained within the 5/4/23 warrant pursuant to subsection D of said section.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to vote to exempt from Section 20 of Chapter 268A of the general laws the contracts and amounts for individuals listed below contained within the 5/11/23 warrant
So
pursuant to...
Sorry.
That's okay. Pursuant to subsection D of said section.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the Selectmen's May 1st, 2023 open meeting.
So moved.
I wasn't here.
Oh, okay.
Abstain.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to vote to accept the letter of resignation from Council on Aging from Gillian Frieden.
So moved.
Gil Frieden, sorry.
So moved.
Alva, is there a second?
Second. Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will make a motion to vote to appoint Peter Fippen to a one-year term on the 8 Towns in Great Marsh Coalition and,
Actually, committee.
oh, it's not a coalition, it's committee?
committee.
Okay.
Yeah. And I should abstain, correct?
Yes. Ending 6/30/2024, and we'll sign the appointment card.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a letter in our packets to consider a request from Police Chief Paul D. Francis to carry over 80 hours of vacation time from fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2024.
Is there anything we should know about that? Is that, it's fairly standard, isn't it?
For him, it is on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, his employment contract allows him to carry up to 80 hours over with the selectmen's approval, and it's more of a formality in his case, the way the contract is written. The next one, as Ruth said, is a different story.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the next one is slightly different. This is to consider a request from Sergeant Daniel Bruce to carry over 80 hours of vacation time from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24. And this one's different in the sense that, do you have a letter on that one? So Sergeant Bruce is a union employee, and the first 40 hours that he wants to carry over, he can do so under the with the permission of the chief, but for anything outside of that, he needs the permission of the Board of Selectmen. And his letter reads, dated May 17th, 2023, subject is carry vacation time. Chief Francis, I would like to request to carry over 80 hours or 10 days of vacation time to the next fiscal year. Given this year's current staffing levels, the pending paternity leave of Detective Giuliano and the rest of the individuals looking to use up their time, I would prefer to carry time into the next fiscal year to help with the current departmental needs. I would use the carried time off in a timely fashion that will not create a burden on the department. So the one point I want to bring up just for everyone's Alva, because this will be new for you and Peter, just to remind you that we did this for the same individual last year as well. So I think we need to get out of the habit of the carryovers. And he does mention that in the email that it's because of staffing issues, but he and the chief are the two individuals that work Monday through Friday on a 5 and 2. So, and no one is supposed to backfill them. So they shouldn't really have the staffing issues that we do have on the other shifts. So, just to
Okay.
say.
Noted.
Noted. So I will entertain a motion to approve the request from Sergeant Bruce to carry over the 80 hours of vacation time for fiscal 23 to fiscal 24.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is Meredith fine? Meredith is not here. I'm going to skip the next one. Do you think, so this one to vote to sign the application for the transfer, do you think I need to wait a minute, or do you think since it was just a clerical, I don't need to?
It's just a clerical, unless you have questions.
I don't. So I want to take 1 second and just pause and welcome Alva Ingahara, who's our newest selectman. So you'll hear me referring to kind of bringing her up to speed a little bit. And Alva, I should have done that in the beginning of the meeting, my apologies, but welcome. And so we had a public hearing on the transfer of license from Terry and Joe Salucci of JT Farnham's to the new owner, and there was just a clerical issue with the ABCC paperwork, and now we have the new packet before us. That's going to be the next item on the agenda. Counsel, who was with us at the hearing, will be here tonight for a different hearing. She's not here, but I had no questions on this. So unless you do, I will entertain a motion to vote to sign the re-application for the transfer of license for JT Farnham's. The previous one was incorrectly completed.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Will you just point to that for Peter?
I don't know if, should Alva sign it? It doesn't matter, I guess.
Not at this
No.
point, I think we're voting tonight.
Reapplication.
Yeah, and it's a new application. I would say yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to ratify the town administrator's signature on a letter of support on behalf of the Council on Aging for a regional grant application to the Executive Office of Elder Affairs to enhance digital literacy in older adults.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have 8 minutes. Do you think you can cover the property lines at the senior center?
Yeah.
Or should we hold that?
Yeah, I can cover it.
Okay.
So you have in your packages a survey that was done by an abutter to the senior center. The abutter is on the right-hand side when you face the senior center. The assessor's map for the right-hand property line of the abutter, so that's not the one that is shared in common with the senior center, which would be on the left. The next one over, this surveyor said that it's 106.92 feet long. The assessor's map says it's 110 feet long, and we have another plan on file that's actually been recorded that says that that line is 110 feet long. I did talk via email with the surveyor, and the surveyor said, well, simply the assessor's map is wrong, as is this other plan of land, because he feels that they followed the assessor's map. So really before and the issue here is that the abutter claims that their property line goes through a portion of a paved area that the town uses as the rightmost handicap parking spot. So it's up to the board as to whether you want to accept that or require more justification as to why one of the lines is different. Because if one of the lines is different, that would mean the angles of these other lines are probably different. Again, the explanation given was that the assessor's maps are probably wrong because this map that they took it from is probably wrong.
This was an issue like 4 or 5 years ago.
And you said to them, well, please go and have us, if you feel that that's the case, have your property surveyed and provide us with a plan, which is what they've done. It took them a little while to do that, but that's what they presented now. The issue that I have is still there's a discrepancy between what we're being presented in the official record of the town.
Well, so my question would go to the surveyor. So I'm seeing that we have iron rods that are depicted in this plot plan.
But they were
But
set.
they were set.
That's right.
So this is him setting the rods in the
Except for the
position.
one that you saw, the iron pipe in the back is found.
Right, this one's found. All the rest are set by this surveyor.
That's right. So if the angles are off, my point is you only have one point
Right. I
to
think
pivot off of.
I would argue that I would want other points or at least county markers to make sure that this is accurate. Set rods is not, that this surveyor said.
themselves, yeah.
Exactly. So I would want more information before.
So what
take
should
any
I,
action.
what should I tell the property owner that's questioning?
How much is it off in the handicap parking, like 5 feet?
I think it's about 4 to 6 feet.
Yeah. And So do we think that even if this plot is off, it's gonna be off enough to, cover that 4 or 5 feet?
Well, my issue is that if the board is being asked to say, okay, we agree with you, and there's a discrepancy in the plan between the plan and the official record, I don't think I would recommend that the board
Just go on there.
simply go and agree. Now, you have a couple of options. You could get your own surveyor, which will cost money, or you could ask them to substantiate things more fully.
Yeah,
I mean, every lot of land has a book and page that has iron rods or pins or county markers that can be found. You may have to go further than you like, but I think that we need to require more information at the expense of the person who's, arguing, challenging
yeah.
this. So I would say we need more information and that we can table this until we receive more. That's my feeling.
sounds good.
Alva, you on the same page?
Agreed, yep.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll take no action at this time.
I'll let them know that you're looking for more information,
Perfect.
explanation.
I will entertain a motion to vote to ratify the chairman's signature on a contract with Weston and Sampson with respect to the replacement of aging water and sewer equipment. All costs to be offset by the GAP 3 energy grant already approved by the board, various National Grid and DEP incentives and rebates, and approximately $12,000 of ARPA funding.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to consider a request from the Friends of the Essex Elementary School to hold their annual Happy as a Clam 5K race on Friday, September 15th, 2023, starting at 5 p.m.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next one, I think at some point will be a lengthy discussion, but I'm going to bring it up because I think we should talk about the possibility of taking no action but revisiting this at a later date. So next on our agenda is to discuss requirements for mobile food truck licensing beyond the mobile food service permit for the Board of Health, whether on private property or town property, and if the board is interested, consider a policy for allowance of food trucks on town property. So this came up because we actually had food vendors that were coming into town for, the first one that happened was for the opening day of the baseball game, and it was pretty successful. We had no problems, no complaints. It was great. But it does bring up that food trucks are becoming increasingly more popular, and where are they going to be allowed? So the reason I mentioned the possibility of tabling this for a later date is that I think that we should consider a policy of how many are we going to allow? Where are we going to allow them? Will there be some sort of a lottery? And I wanted to look at Gloucester actually does have a lottery process where they allow, I believe, 13 food vendors in the city. They have locations, they're specified locations that they allow them at, in particular days of the week, times, noise levels that are appropriate for the neighborhood. And it's, I don't think it's first come, first serve. I think it's a true lottery, and you're never guaranteed the same spot year over year. So I don't think we're big enough that people are going to come. But do we want to make sure that we do have some policy in place if they're going to park at Clammer's Beach, or they're going to park at the ball field or Centennial Grove? Do we want to make sure that it's not just one truck all the time? Do we want to rotate it? Do we want to do a lottery? So I think this is really worth exploring, but I want to put some more thought into it before we make final decisions. How do you guys feel?
I think that makes sense.
I think it makes sense. The one question I did have that I couldn't find on any website, and I just don't know if it was me, I mean, do they get, because I feel for the restaurants in town, they like when a crowd comes in because after a game or something, they may want to go out to eat. So do we get the same tax incentives that we do with local restaurants where we get?
I don't think so, no.
So one of the things, Alva, I know with meals tax, the town of Essex only gets meals tax from, say, like a catering company, if the catering company's home base location is within our town. So if, like, Tim Hopkins is in Essex and they cater an event, whether it's in Essex or Topsfield or Boxford or wherever, we actually get those meals tax because his home base is Essex. If somebody else caters it, it goes to the community where their address is licensed in. So I don't know specifically, but in my mind, because that was one of my questions, I'm thinking that it's probably the same way. But then they do pay based on excise because it's a rolling vehicle, so I'm not entirely sure. I think we should look into
And the
that.
only reason I was asking that is that I mean, if not, then, do we make it for a limit of an event?
Which is
Yeah,
what
it
it,
would come into the
right.
policy that we
And
set
right
up,
now, the Board of Health, their food license is a one-day permit for a food truck, which I believe is $50, and an annual, I believe, is $75.
Right, they offer both, but just because you get an annual license for your food truck, it doesn't mean you can actually go to, especially when it comes to town property, anywhere. The food license is just that you're cleared with the Board of Health and nothing more.
Right. Then you have to get permission if we,
From the town, or even if it's a private owner, you need to get,
time you go. or-
right, and there are other permits that are necessary too,
Yep.
which can all be spelled out. Now, what is your suggestion? Do you want me to put together some kind of a draft for the next meeting that you can then
Sure.
review? And
If you want to, sure, I was going to do it for you.
I won't complain. You want to do
Happy
it?
to do it.
We'll work together.
We'll work
All right.
together. Okay, so we'll table that for the next meeting. And I do have 6:16. We do have an appointment. It is a public hearing for a transfer of annual alcohol license for an all-alcohol restaurant license for the Windward Grill, Tim Kennefick, manager at 109 Eastern Ave, to Vita Bella Ristorante, Susan Warnick, manager. And I know that we have Meredith Fine with us, who is the attorney for for Tim. So I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing for the transfer of the all-alcohol license.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor by roll
Aye.
call vote?
Peter Fippen, aye?
Alvin Gahirway?
Ruth Perrine, aye. Meredith, do you want to join us at the podium? And if you could just speak probably within 3 inches of the microphone, because it needs to pick up your voice on all of the cameras and the speakers.
Yes, good evening. Is this close enough?
Perfect.
Meredith Fine, attorney at 108 East Main Street in Gloucester. I represent Tim and Vicky Kennefick, the current owners of the Windward Grill. And I'm just here to introduce the buyers, who are going to introduce themselves and talk about what their vision is for the property. And we're all excited about this new opportunity.
Thank you, Meredith. So, Susan, thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Warwick.
Hi, Susan. I'm Ruth Perrine, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Peter Fippen, and Alva Ingaharo, also Selectmen.
Nice to meet you all.
Susan, just straighten that mic up. It will get a little closer. Yeah. Thanks.
So if you want to tell us a little bit about the purchase, the plans, the future, maybe some of your background. I obviously have the application, so I have more information, but if you want to tell us a little bit about your history, how long you've had a safe serve, what other things you've done in the restaurant industry, that'll help us narrow down some of our questions.
Okay. I owned a Italian restaurant in Plastown, New Hampshire for the last 4 years. I just sold it a couple of weeks ago. My vision for the grill is to make it into an Italian restaurant. I've done my research. There's no Italian restaurant in the area, so I'm hoping to do well like I did in New Hampshire. What else would you like to know?
So how long have you had a safe serve?
I had it in New Hampshire, and then I just got recertified again.
Okay. And you're tip certified?
Yes.
Perfect. And bear with me. I see through the Secretary of State that you just formed the LLC on 4/21/23. Is that because you came into Massachusetts? This is just new because you're in a new state?
Right.
Okay. Peter, Alva, do you have any questions while I collect my thoughts?
I don't think so, or not at this point.
I don't. Maybe I do.
Go right ahead,
Have you
Alva.
had a restaurant in Massachusetts before?
No, not in Massachusetts.
How many employees at the Plastow site?
I had 20,
Okay, and what are you thinking here?
probably about the
About
same.
the same? Yeah.
Susan, I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you.
If the board has no other questions, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any questions from the public? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the all alcohol license for Vita Bella Ristorante, Susan Warwick, manager.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Susan, you're all set. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good luck.
Just the one? Just that one? Peter.
Just the one pager.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to sign the Selectmen Citizenship Award proclamation for this year's senior graduate. Consider who will present the award on May 24th, 2023. And just to note that it could be a conflict with our planning board meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, yeah, that's actually this Wednesday. Is there somebody that is available and wants to present this Wednesday? The senior award is at 6 PM.
I'm unavailable. I have
Okay.
a seminar that day. Too bad I know Ava a little bit.
That's okay. Albert, do you have interest, or would you like me to take it?
I'm gonna let you take it.
Okay. So you can put me down as the person to take it, and I will just be late to the planning board meeting. Okay. I will entertain a motion to sign the renewal paperwork for the town's police and fire accident insurance policy.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to sign the renewal paperwork for the town's police and fire excess medical accident coverage.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we received a letter from a resident with observations about she is a longtime Essex resident with respect to the need to return to more beachside parking at Clammer's Beach.
Yep, she actually came to see me, and she came to Essex in 1947 and frequented Clammer's Beach when she was young. She mentioned that she always remembers about 4 cars being able to park straight in, in front of Clammer's Beach, not across the street. She feels that having additional cars, where right now there's probably only about 2 that can fit in, is quite a benefit to the senior citizens, because a lot of them would visit Canomo Point, but not actually go out front to Front Beach, because at the time, the parents and the people in town felt that the current was too swift. So they swam from Clammer's Beach. And so that's near and dear to them more than Front Beach is. With respect to why it might be that way, here's an old map of Canomo Point. And when you look at Clammer's Beach on the old map, you see a row of rocks that were hand-drawn, and they appear to be just one lane. This particular resident indicated that those rocks over the years have been moved farther over to accommodate more than one vehicle backing down at once. In addition, we have the kayak racks that are new. And I did explain to her that there was a thought that those kayak racks could be elsewhere, but other senior citizens who like to use the racks have a hard time taking the boat into the water if it's not right there on the beach. So I wonder if we could take a look at least the placement of the rocks and maybe try to get back to 3 spots instead of 2. That's my thought.
I'm trying to picture the rocks. Are they on, as you're facing the water, are they on the left? Or
They're on the left. The boat ramp is against that
Yeah.
seawall.
Right. Okay. And how big are they?
Good-sized boulders. I mean, they could be easily moved
Yeah.
with a backhoe. The question is, do you want two continuous lanes to back down, or do you want, if we narrowed it at the beginning, you could maybe gain that space and then widen it back, keep it wide at the end, and that way, one rig could back down, and then the other one would wait, and they could back down. You could have two launch or retrievals at once, but only one passing, which is really not. So my idea is I could go down there and look to see if we can maybe get it.
So, but would we make the parking spaces all seniors or handicap spots? I mean, there's no guarantee, if you get there at 12 noon, even if there's 12 spots there, they'd probably.
I asked that
take-
question, and she wasn't concerned about that. She just feels like two isn't enough, and they understand that it's first come, first served. So the best I can tell is that there's a chance that if you move the rocks, and there's a way to do that, you might gain a space.
Yeah,
I just wouldn't want to make the launch smaller because of the fact that even if I go with my kayak and I back my Jeep up, there's a boat person trying to get their boat out at the same time, type of thing.
Right, and that's why I said,
Yeah.
if it was narrower only at the beginning,
right.
then you would only have a conflict on in and out, but you would still have two rigs in there. It's entirely up to the board. I told her I would bring the observations to you because she took the time to come to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can accommodate it, why not? I don't see any downside for doing that. I don't want to move the kayak racks because of the reasons you stated, but if we can make it work by moving a few rocks around, I think
All right,
that's
well,
okay.
what I'll do is probably take a couple of pictures and then bring it back to the board, and you can make a decision at some other time.
Now, and is it because across the street is just for those with, what are those called, trailers? Because I park there illegal
Right.
all the time, keep waiting to find my.
I'm not sure if it's signed that way. I'll look at that.
I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because I keep going, I go out kayaking and then I come back, go, okay, my Jeep's still here.
I think it's not because of that. It's because they actually like to pull up, be right up front, and sometimes not even get out of the car, but just enjoy.
Yep, absolutely.
So I will get more information for the board on that.
I will entertain a motion to ratify the town administrator's signature on behalf of the chairman, of a contract for the replacement and augmentation of plantings in downtown Essex public spaces.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that had to be done because the event was taking place before your meeting, so we got it done in time.
Looked nice.
Yeah, they did a good job.
I will entertain a motion to sign the contract for the purchase of a replacement copier for the town hall.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have that paperwork? You have it, okay.
And, yeah, didn't we have that in the folder? Oh, hang on, I saw it, I read it. I'm gonna wait, we only have 1 minute. I'll do the license.
This
list.
next one, you might want to go over when you talk about the whole school budget.
And I
think
have 1 minute till our appointment's at 6:30, so
Yeah.
I'm just kind of
Yeah.
delaying so we can get there. Mhm. This one. I will entertain a motion to approve the student commercial shellfish permit for Charles Musarin.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's 6:30, and we do have an appointment/agenda item this evening. And the topic is to discuss with various interested parties their ideas for future use of the town-owned property at 30 Apple Street, in addition to and compatible with alternative access to the town's transfer station property. So this came about, I started receiving emailed requests and people stopping me in public and talking about what they would like to see happen at 30 Apple Street. At the time, I said, well, you know, we're just kind of in the conversation piece of this. We haven't brought it to town meeting, we haven't voted, we don't own it. When we officially own it, we sign the purchase and sales, we take ownership, we will have a meeting, we will hear everyone's ideas so that the entire board can be on the same page. So this evening, what I want to do is invite those people that reached out. There's probably 6 or 8 people that we invited this evening. They're going to present their ideas. There won't be any votes taken, motions made. It's just for discussion so that everyone's on the same page. And these meetings are recorded so that residents can look back, see what the conversations were, what the asks were, what they're passionate about or not, and get us feedback. So, so without further ado, I'm just going to start with people on the phone or on the TV. It's a little bit more difficult to acknowledge them, and I do see people in the room that I do know. So I'm going to start with people that have dialed in this evening, either from your computer, telephone. If you're with us and it's about 30 Apple Street, if you could unmute, let us know your name and address, and please present what you were interested in talking about 30 Apple Street tonight.
I think
Okay.
someone tried to speak there, though the video
That
changed.
says KS.
Yeah.
The person that says KS, can you try to unmute yourself if you were trying to speak?
They
Okay,
just
I
did.
see you. Can you speak and see if we can hear you? You're speaking, but we can't hear you. Hold
Yeah.
1 second, we're going to play with our audio in the room. Okay. Teresa, that's actually Kate that unmuted. Can you text her and see if she can hear us clearly? And obviously let her know we can't hear her. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, will you do me a favor? Will you ask Kate to unmute and try to speak, see if we can hear her?
Certainly looked like it.
Yeah, it did look like it. She can hear us. She can hear us. Yeah. Will you ask Kate to speak? Perfect.
But I just heard her speak on here, it's not coming through the house.
She just said she tried a few times.
Oh, I heard something.
Let's turn this volume all the way up and see if the board can hear. Oh. That was a whole.
Kate, hang on 1 second. Thank you for doing this for us.
But she didn't want to.
All right, if we're very quiet, we can see. Say something? I would have tried else.
Kate, can you say hi? Hi. Okay. Kate,
People who are also listening at home can hear.
they can all hear. Okay. So thank you for bearing with us here. We have some technical difficulties. It doesn't appear as if anybody on the phone with us this evening actually does want to present ideas about 30 Apple Street, so I think we're okay there. So I'm going to move on to the room. So anybody in the room with us, please step to the microphone. You do need to speak about 3 or 4 inches away from the microphone. Name, address, and present your idea for the board, please. Priscilla, I see you. Step right up.
Thank you. Great to see you all this evening. Priscilla Malbuff, 28 Apple Street, so direct abutter to 30 Apple. In terms of what I'd like to see there, I'd of course like no change at all. It's beautiful habitat for years. It's been farmed. as a hayfield, and I think that that provides a lot of benefit to the community at large, and it certainly is consistent with the town as being a rural setting. That said, I recognize, one, that the town wants to, I believe it's a dirt road that's planned for the alternate access to the dump, am I right?
Just a road. We haven't determined dirt road. We just are talking about the need for a road to go from Apple Street to the transfer station should the culvert that's there have an issue.
So it hasn't been decided, like, what that surface would be? Okay.
No.
So, that would be, if that's all that happened there, that would be great, because again, it would be beneficial to wildlife and could still be arguably used as a hayfield. Going back further, there's a hedgerow that runs probably, from Apple Street all the way down, though don't ask me directions, the left-hand lot line that's, abutting me. I'd be interested in buying that whole row. It's probably about 1,000 feet, so by 30. And if the town, for whatever reason, didn't want to sell me that 30-foot by 1,000-foot strip, I would love to buy then directly off of my lot line to provide me some buffering between me and whatever else goes on there. So about a 30 by 240-foot strip. I would, of course, get a survey. I would have the property appraised. I would be open to, like if the appraisal, for instance, because of market conditions, came in less than what the town purchased the property for, I would pay what the town purchased the property for. I wouldn't want the town to lose any money on it. But I see it beneficial to have that chunk, not just from my perspective looking across my lot line to whatever ends up being there, but also it removes that portion from the tax rolls. It improves arguably the value of my property, which would help increase my tax that I pay into the town. So there it is.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
I just think to point out one thing.
Town meeting.
Yeah, town meeting would be required
Of course.
to sell property, and even if town meeting gave consent to sell property, it would be on a competitive basis.
That's totally fine. Totally get that. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Janet, did you still want to present your idea? You had sent me an email probably 9 months ago about the idea of using the land for a farmer. I can find the email if you want to, or maybe you don't want to present any longer.
Janet Carlson, 24 Apple Street. And I'm going to say tonight that I support what 3 other residents here tonight are presenting, so I don't really need to present my idea at this point unless it doesn't come up otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody and Ryan?
Hi, Jody Harris, 21R Spring Street, representing the Economic Development Committee. So as we all know, we're in a economic crunch in Essex and looking for revenue. So Ryan and I started looking at this piece of property when it became available, and we would like to start looking at it to do some over 55 housing, perhaps some affordable units as well. The potential revenue stream from that property could bring probably at least $200,000 a year, which I think would help to close our gap that we're having funding the schools and our upcoming capital projects, such as the water infrastructure, the fire trucks that are coming up. We have a lot coming up on the plate. So over 55 housing would not add to our headcount in the school district, so it would help out with our apportionment issue, as well as give our seniors in town who would like to sell their homes but want to stay in Essex. They're looking for a place to stay. So everybody seems to be sitting on a fairly expensive piece of real estate these days. It would give an opportunity for seniors who would like to sell their real estate and get out of the larger home and step down and provide some step down housing for them. It would provide additional revenue with the sale of their home for real estate tax, in addition to providing new revenue, new growth with our over 55 housing. Ryan Madrigal's with me. He is more of an expert in development and construction than I, so he can explain a little more.
So with the 55 and up community, it would solve a lot of problems with elderly residents who are in need of an affordable place to live without leaving their town. Then also, like Jody has mentioned, it also solve a few of the income needs that we have. And another thing that it would be a benefit of is the town road we just talked about. If we have a development that has housing, that would provide us the road to get you into the back end of the transfer station. So this development would actually benefit the town as a whole, not just a few individuals. It would outreach for the whole town.
Great, thank you. Does the board have questions?
So when you say for over 55, because there are some places I've seen for over 55 and they're over 800,000 for a unit. So what kind of units are you looking at?
So we're looking almost like a townhome configuration, where it'd be two separate houses adjoining each other. It'd be garage level, and then lower level room for as you age, obviously, and an upper level as well.
How many, at that configuration, how many units will it hold, the property hold?
The first calculation was 16 units.
16? Ooh,
16, yep. So divide that by half, you get 8 conjoined.
8 buildings.
Yep, 8 buildings.
Do you have any other further questions?
Nope.
No? Alva? And I do not have any questions. Thank you both so much. Is there anybody else in the room that's here for 30 Apple Street? Hi there.
How you doing? My name is Cole Desmond. I am not a resident of Essex, but I'm a farmer in Ipswich, and I would just like to suggest that it would be great to keep that as a hayfield. My friend Doug Kriz back there, he'll speak after me. His family's been farming it for 3 generations. It really pains me to see fields come out of the agricultural rotation. Development's happening more and more for those over 55 communities, and it just really, it's awful being a farmer on the North Shore facing the kind of development that we're seeing. So to have a town have such a great field that's so great for local farmers, people seem to love it driving by. It's a great field, great habitat. It's great for everybody as it is, and I would just love to see it stay the same way.
Thank you, Cole. Anybody else?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Faith Gist, 35 Apple Street. And for the last 7 years, we've actually been the ones to have their service to help hay that field. We worked with Mrs. Fry for a long time, and they've been amazing haying it for us. Together as a collaboration, we totally support everything that you just said. The farmers all over the place, but especially on the North Shore, are really suffering with the lack of land that's available. I'm here because we also have an idea about the land and very amenable to talk about it staying under a farming designation. I own a company called Faith Skincare. We own the parcel across the street and the parcel on 35 Apple Street. When Mrs. Fry passed away, Max reached out to see if we could purchase it, but $1 million for the land, the metrics don't make sense for us to be able to farm it, but we would like to continue to farm it. We would like to propose to the town, if this should go further, a financial agreement where we could lease the property. We would have zero dispute on a road going in and understand the culvert and the access to the dump, and we understand that's important, and that would not persuade us from moving forward in any way. In addition to that, I'd love to talk to you about your footage, and because I don't think we have an issue on that either. I think everybody could win. What I do is I own a skincare company. We are nationwide. We're about to launch in Europe next year. We are non-toxic, botanically based skincare. And so we grow quite a few of our botanicals on Apple Street Farm. As everybody knows, it's one of the oldest farmsteads in the country, or in the town. We also farm over at Brick Ends Farm, and we would like to expand into this field and pay the town for the privilege to be able to do that. We have 86 ingredients across our deck, 13 of which can be grown in Zone 6, 7 of which can be grown in bulk in this region, and that field is ideal. Around the country, as you're saying, there's only 400 available acres of one of our ingredients, arnica, and we would like to really install in full. It would be beautiful. It would be a prolific flowering plant until we harvest and extract the botanicals. I think it's a win for the town. It's a win for people that want it to stay in conservation, and it definitely would be a win for the farmers. So we would like to know how we would proceed and who we would give a formal presentation. I brought a formal presentation, but I don't know how I would hook it up. But we are prepared to move forward and talk what financial agreements would make sense for the town.
That's what I'm going to say.
Do you have questions for me?
So, like the request to purchase some of the property, any interest in property, including leasing property, is a town meeting vote. And then beyond that, the state procurement rules would require that the area be competitively procured for the lease. So even though you might be interested and you would offer a certain amount of money, some other company that feels that, or some other farm or whatever, that feels that the field is ideal, might also put in a proposal. So it's nothing you could deal directly on. It have to have town meeting say yes to the lease, and then a competitive process thereafter.
Great, so we would welcome all of that. We've already gone ahead and done our analyses on the property and on this region, and we would be more than welcoming. The other thing we would like to discuss with the town is sister partnerships with other farms. So we work with Brick Ends Farm, so we would be able to be rehabilitating the soil and all of those pieces, and so there is possibly another scalable revenue there for the town as well. So we would then ask where we might pitch all of this idea to the town.
Right. It's going to come down to whether the selectmen look at all these ideas and want to bring any of them that require town meeting intervention to the town meeting, which would not happen until at least November.
Great. So is that a hindrance to the thinking on this property? Is it having to go to a town meeting? Is that?
It's not a hindrance. It's whether or not the three elected officials want to propose that idea to the town.
I see.
And with respect to, let's say that they do want to do that, and the town says, fine, let's lease it. Then it would be up to the board to structure the request for proposals in a way that they feel would be most beneficial. And they really can't have a lot of communication with people that are potentially going to be making a proposal before they outline what it is they would like to see.
Okay. And so we would wait from directive from the board to let us know what the thinking is on all of the ideas pitched. Does the town ever get any sort of input on how the board would consider the ideas, the town residents?
So we have 30 people, between people online this evening and people in the room, there are 30 people. We are recorded live, so it is being broadcast through cable. And then people do go back, usually 48 hours later, and watch these videos. So that's why something like this is such a big topic in a large piece of land. It was an expensive investment, that you're going to find that this is going to be the topic of conversation by the time I get home tonight. I'm sure it will be on Facebook, and all of these ideas will be out there and people will be commenting. And that will give us not that we don't run government on Facebook, but it does help us gauge where people are, what they want to see. I think ideas that are presented tonight will make its way back to the board, which is why we would be doing a disservice to the residents if we took a vote tonight without waiting for the feedback.
agreed.
So it's important for us to let this fester and then revisit the topic. And this isn't one of those topics where I would say, let's table it in 2 weeks, bring it back and make a decision like a food truck. That would be something that in 2 weeks we could talk about. This is something that I think needs to get a lot more feedback from the community. What do we want to see on this? I mean, going from the realm of haying the field to using it for botanicals to over 55 housing are, two different ends of the spectrum, and I haven't presented my idea yet. So that's going to really throw a whole wrench into the works. It's not my idea. I'm presenting it for somebody else. So, we have two ends of the spectrum, and we need to get the feedback. So I think that's what will happen. And at a point when it's appropriate, we will bring you all back and say, let's tell you what we've heard, and then, come to a meeting of the minds.
Okay, great.
But as I did with this, I did not forget anyone that reached out to me initially many, many months ago. They were invited tonight and to do this. And it doesn't mean this will be the only time we do this. We just wanted to get all of the ideas out in the public for discussion so that it's, transparent and all that good stuff.
Great.
All right?
Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
Would this all be chemical-free farming?
It's all non-toxic, chemical-free.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the room that wants to present? Please join us.
Hi, thank you. My name is Doug Kriz. I am a said farmer that hays on Apple Street. And one of my couple questions is, when do you close on the property?
We closed on the property 4 weeks ago? 3 or 4 weeks ago.
And another question is, do you want it hayed this year? Because it's kind of go time.
So paving it requires financing.
Yeah.
And anything we do in the town requires a town meeting vote to appropriate those funds. That's not something, until we bought.
Haying.
Oh,
haying.
haying.
Yeah.
I apologize. I thought you said
No,
paving.
haying.
Sorry. The same thing is going to hold true. I believe that if we are going to have that field hayed, we're going to have to allow for people to submit bids, even if it's a no-cost bid, to give them the same equal opportunity to hay that field.
Right, that one would not require a town meeting vote because the entity would not be getting an interest in the property. But then we would just go straight to the procurement step, which requires, depending on the value of the haying, it requires certain competitive measures.
When would that happen?
Well, it would be up to the board as to whether they even wanted to entertain it, and it would take probably at least a month from now just to get that off the ground.
Okay.
That's if the board says tonight they would, they wanted to do something like that.
Okay.
So it would be kind of like a temporary use. It would be.
Right, it would be like you're hiring a landscaper to cut the grass. It's just a little bit different than what's going to happen with it.
That might be something we need to discuss tonight, right?
Yeah, right now, yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of what
I
is
guess
it.
my other question was, were we going to put together a forum or a subcommittee that would discuss this as far as collecting all of the ideas?
I haven't given that part much thought. I wanted to get the ideas out there into the public so that they could start talking about it and bring it back to us, let us know what they want to see. I think it's going to be important to see which ideas kind of come to the surface and which ones don't. You may get ideas that are shot down right away, but haying the field, if it's not for somebody that's willing to do it and potentially profit off it or whatever is going to happen, it falls back on the shoulders of the DPW. And I'm sure we're going to hear that they, don't have the staff to do it, another parcel. So I'm not opposed to the idea of having somebody that's been haying the field, hay the fields, but I also have announced at the beginning that we're not making any decisions. So I need the board to, let me know how they feel about this. And then for our town administrator to make sure he takes the lead and make sure that we've dotted the i's and crossed the t's, that we're not.
Right, because he was haying the field for a private owner, and now it's a government owner, and so we would have to, certainly you would be welcome to participate in the procurement.
There's only, it's not like landscaping. There's maybe 2 people that have haying equipment within a certain radius. And we're all busy, so in a month, 6 weeks, you might not have anyone that wants it, which is
I
fine.
understand that. It's just we're limited by the procedures that we have to follow.
You know, so, and if you guys want to bush hog it, go for it, you know, I mean, it's nothing to me, but if you guys wanted to do it, that's no problem. There's no cost to you.
Right.
I'm in and out in 3 days, you know, and then it's all yours.
I think it's prudent if we want to keep the property as it is, that it be hayed at least once this year. We just don't want it to grow. I don't know, maybe we do want it to grow up. We haven't decided
I don't
yet.
know.
Doug, how often do you hay that field?
Once.
You do it once?
Yeah, maybe twice. I mean, I didn't put fertilizer on it this year because it was kind of in limbo, and I'm not going to spend my money to put, I mean, fertilizer is $800 a ton, you know. I'm not going to pour money into it if the town's going to come and bush hog it.
Sure.
But no, it's one shot. It's 3 days, weather dependent, obviously, and then it's done. You know, that's the beauty about haying. I'm not back every couple weeks, every couple days. It's not like mowing your grass. Once you're done, you're done. Okay. But like I said, that's completely up to you. I mean, I know that there's certain procedures, but you know, haying is not like
Right, no, I get that. And
landscape,
part of the issue is I don't really know what the value is that we're talking about here. If the value of something is less than $10,000, I'm guessing that it is, then that's sound business practices, which means there doesn't need to be competition for that service.
Award a contract, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so we could have some discussion on that right now to understand what the value is, because we just haven't done any research on
yeah,
that.
and it's not, to be perfectly honest with you, it's not as good a hay field as it looks. I mean, it should be plowed. If you were really going to do it long term, it would need to be plowed up and reseeded. It's fine. You know, typically we get about 200 to 300 bales off it, not, you know, 500, 600, 700, 800.
What's the retail value of one bale?
In the summer, sold out of the field, probably $6, $7.
$7 for the whole bale.
Yeah.
Retail, like not wholesale, like if
No, that's retail.
retail.
Summer, out
And
of
you
the
have
field.
like 200, you said? 300?
Probably, yeah.
300 tops?
Without fertilizer, yes.
That's way less than $10,000.
Oh, I can assure you it's less than 10,000.
So you have somebody here that's willing. The key is he's going to walk away with something of value, right? Unless the town is asking for part of that money to come back to the town.
I think,
The value he's walking away with is not more than the competitive procurement limit.
I mean, for me, this sounds like a win-win. We have somebody willing to do it.
Yeah.
He gets to make a couple of dollars, and we don't put the burden on our DPW, so.
And the nice thing is, you know, it's once, I'm in, I'm out, it's all and that's how, you know, me and my grandfather have been doing it for Al Craig, who some of you might know, and of 15 years, you know, forever, really. And, you know, the last couple of years as Mrs. Fry went downhill, it was kind of in limbo. And last year I did it, but this year I really didn't know. And I certainly didn't want to get arrested as I'm mowing for trespassing, so that's why I showed up.
So it's not a good enough field to mow again in the late summer or
I mean, you could, a lot of that's weather dependent.
Yeah.
Like last year with the drought, there
Right.
were hardly any because I do the hay down at Cogswell's Grant. And those are really nice fields. But even there, you know, there's so little land that you have to really fertilize it to get second cut. And I haven't gotten second cut off Apple Street in probably 5-6 years. It's really not worth it with the fuel. So. But,
The other thing is we would need, are you insured? Do you have an insurance policy?
yes. I have insurance, the
So
equipment's insured.
your company could name the town as an additional insured on your policy?
Yeah.
I don't have any concerns then. It's up to the board as to whether you want that done.
I think that we want to be able to entertain what the public wants to do with that parcel, that it would give us time to do that.
Right, this is just a neutral maintenance activity. This is not an interest in the property.
Yeah, this is just to take care of it once.
Yeah. Doug, will you spell your last name for me, please?
K-O-L-D-E-R. R-I-Z.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to have Doug Kriz hay the field at 30 Apple Street, provided that he supplies the town with a insurance certificate naming the town of Essex as an additional insured,
And that he removes all the hay bales.
and that you remove all the
Yeah,
hay bales.
yeah.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We appreciate your time. Is there anybody else in the room?
So, James Gist, 35 Apple Street. My wife is Faith, and I'll buy all the hay off of Doug. So the hay bales will all be gone across the street because that's the deal we worked out with him for the past 5 years.
Perfect.
You had a good question about toxic farming. I work for a company called Brick End Farms. We've done this in Hamilton for, 30 years now. What we did is we partnered with the town of Hamilton. We have CSAs. We grow everything from vegetables to flowers. We do it all organic and non-toxic. What we do is we create compost. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but we take food waste, a couple of additives, make it into this really rich soil, and that's a good fertilizer for maintaining any kind of soil or remediating any kind of soils that are out there. That would be the kind of farming we would do across the street. Just wanted to clarify that for you because you did mention chemical farming, which would not be part of that. So
Sure.
all
Yeah,
organic
and
and clean.
the river's right there, so whatever's on the field is going in the river. Yeah.
Exactly right. And I don't know, we can get into composting and what that does and what that does for soils and everything else, but the big picture here is it's very clean, certified organic, and it's done in a way that would enhance that field, whatever you did do at the future. And this kind of farming is nothing permanent. It's all hoop housing. It's all temporary and can come in there. You can set your rows. And then, like you said, you can till it up the next 2 years and turn it back into hay. But we would also be remediating that soil so that it would be a much healthier place for things to do whatever you want to do with it. I mean, 55 housing is not going to really care about that, but if you had to do fields or leave it as open. All right, any other questions on the fertilization? Cool.
I don't. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Okay, is there anybody else? I'm going to go back to online. Is there anybody online with an idea for 30 Apple Street? Okay, last call for anybody in the room. Okay, so another idea was presented to me, so I'm going to do the final idea. This will not be the most popular idea in this room, I'm sure, because of the 3 people that spoke before me. But the current Essex Elementary School on Story Street sits on 9.9 acres. It has a relatively large area of wetlands behind the building. And an idea that was brought to my attention was the idea of bringing Essex Elementary to the 11.5 acres on 30 Apple Street. It's large, it's flat, it's dry. It has utilities on either side that go right up to it. And it would be a fresh, clean piece of land, so to speak, to start from as a pallet. It would not be undergoing construction around a building like they had to do with some parts of Memorial in Manchester. So it's a fresh, clean pallet. It's not something that I know that the, is it not SBA? What are they called?
School building
School
assistance.
building, okay. So I'm not sure how SBA would look at that because they're still going through the process of, the superintendent submitted a letter of interest. I know they'll hear back on that in the fall. Whether or not they would want to do a renovation or new construction, we don't know that yet. Whether they would want to start with a clean pallet or stay on the same site. And that potential idea of going to 30 Apple Street for Essex Elementary lends to kind of a secondary thing that was brought up. Ryan and Jody presented the idea of over 55 housing. And if in fact 12 Story Street was abandoned as an elementary school and the elementary were to move over to 30 Apple Street, it could potentially allow for us to look at either over 55 housing at the elementary school or turning the elementary school into affordable housing units. So those were some of the ideas that were bounced around. Whether that fizzles to the surface and people like it, I don't know, but I just wanted to make sure that it got out into the universe as well, since it was an idea that was brought forward. And it has been discussed in an economic development committee meeting as a potential, as well as an affordable housing trust meeting, because it does lend itself to the possibility of the elementary school becoming that possibility of affordable housing at some point. So that was the final idea. I don't have all the particulars on that, but if there are any questions that I might be able to answer based on this conversation that I had.
So there would probably have to be some road improvements and all that that would go along with it, so.
Right.
That's an additional cost that would need to be.
It would be an additional cost, but you would also have the, remediation of the wetlands up at the elementary as well. So,
Yeah.
is it a wash? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it worth doing a fresh build on a fresh site?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes doing construction on an envelope that's smaller because of the existing building could get more expensive with design elements because you have to build around something versus,
Yep.
A clean palette.
renting trailers and all that, yeah.
Right. And it would be one of those things where the children could stay in the elementary school during the entire process of construction and then just have a seamless move right into the new building and evacuate the old. Okay, so that is all that we have for that agenda item. I'm going to go over to, do you want to go to the town administrator's report, or do you want to go to the turf fields?
I don't think we should do the turf fields until we see the Finance Committee Chair. I thought he was going to come.
He's here.
Oh, I didn't see.
Yep.
Where is he? Oh, there he is. Yeah, so I'd say yes.
Want to do that? Okay. So next on the agenda is going to be further discussion relative to whether the Manchester Essex Regional School District has the legal authority to actually implement borrowing for the turf fields authorized on March 7th, 2023.
So at this point in time, and the school district has a copy of this letter, back on May 2nd for town meeting, we provided a copy of the letter from special counsel to the school district. Special counsel, his opinion is that the general laws and the regional agreement need to be read together. And whereas the general laws talk about no action as being an approval, the regional agreement actually says that an affirmative vote, 2/3 vote, needs to be taken. So at this point in time, the town is at odds with the district's present position, as I understand it. The town said that, the selectmen said that you would bring up that matter to town meeting in November. And that is still your plan. I take it. There's a new member. So I don't know if the board has discussion on it, but presently we are being told that the district does not have the authority to actually implement the borrowing that was authorized.
I don't have a lot of discussion on this. I mean, based on being at the school committee meetings, it doesn't sound like the school committee, although they did take a vote to allow for borrowing, it doesn't actually sound like there's an intent to borrow until after the project is done. It sounds like the plan is to use reserves to get through construction. I'm getting a face. I'm not entirely sure. Let me make sure I'm right, and then Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that my understanding at this moment is that they're still going forward with Highland Fields no matter what. Brook Street maybe is a little bit up in the air. They're planning on using reserves to fund that, and then once we know the final cost, they're going to ask the towns to fund their portion.
Does the school committee and school administration agree with the decision by the legal counsel?
I don't think we've had feedback on the decision from council.
We haven't had any feedback, so I don't know. My understanding is
They're aware
that
of it, though.
right, they're aware of it, and my understanding is that the district holds that if a vote is not taken within the 45-day time frame, then it's the same as a constructive approval. Again, our special counsel disagrees with that.
Teresa, did I explain that correctly?
the original intent.
Teresa, do you mind? They'll hear you better.
Yes, you explained it correctly based on the original plan. Of course, with the failed override, everything's up in the air right now. So I would say moving forward, the conversation will continue and move forward from there. And to answer the other question, we have not had a chance to discuss the outcome because we've been busy trying to deal with the override situation, and that impacts all of this.
Okay, thank you so much. You're welcome. So I don't know that any further discussion on this is necessary at this time, and I assumed that the override was going to be part of
And
that.
so your thoughts were, your understanding was is that it's going to be for the feasibility or to do it and then come to the towns and ask us to fund it?
No, the feasibility is done. This is for final construction. Yep, you can answer it, Teresa.
After the project.
So the project itself is ready to go. We have the design, everything is all ready to go. It's just an issue of the funding. So
It already went out to bid, actually, right? You have a
Yes.
contractor ready to go.
Right, it's just an
Yeah.
issue of where the money's coming
Yep.
from. So yes, the original plan, the plan all along has been to fund, or the plan since we changed course a little bit in this winter, has been to fund it from reserves. And then the conversation was to ask the towns to assist by either borrowing or using free cash, whichever the towns were comfortable with. But with the failed override, we have Brook Street really on hold until we move forward with a plan for dealing with this. Highland Field has to move forward no matter what. So we are moving forward with that. But then the rest of the budget discussions kind of take precedence over Brook Street Field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so with that, do you want to move into a conversation with the chairman of the Finance Committee?
Yes.
Because in my report, there's an item that would come under.
Ben, do you want to join us? You can actually bring a chair to the end of the table and just take Alva's microphone and we can all share. Roll right up.
We haven't formally met yet.
Before, just to be very clear for Teresa, before Ben begins, the board currently is not, the board currently puts the town's position as the position of special counsel, right? Just so we're very clear.
Correct.
There's no dissent from that. Okay.
Do you want to move into your town administrator's report item about the schools?
Yeah,
And then Ben can lead in.
Yep, so in my report, I have an item about a possible special town meeting and the Manchester Essex Regional School District budget. I can say that if the reconsidered budget that is voted upon by the school committee, which I think is planned for June 6th, brings the apportionment down to where it is at or lower than the amount authorized in Article 4, which was the article for the Manchester Essex budget that was within the levy, then there would not need to be an additional town meeting. I don't know that that's going to happen, but it's important to understand that as one of the possibilities. I think Chairman Buttrick's here to talk about perhaps something that may be less than what the original budget that the school committee put forward, but perhaps not down to the level of Article 4. And I think you have had some discussion with the Finance Committee with respect to different options. So I think that's where we could lead in.
Sure, happy to take over from here. So basically, the Essex Finance Committee met this afternoon knowing that tomorrow night is the public hearing for the school committee, and also knowing that you were meeting tonight. So we thought it would be helpful to have a report out for the purpose of this meeting. And we sought to do three things in the meeting. The first thing that we wanted to do was to establish a collective view on input to the reconsidered budget to communicate tomorrow night to the school committee. The second item is to talk about what I'm calling the sort of long-term sustainable budget growth of the district, which I know has been talked about many times before, but for the purpose of clarity, and since we have a new composition of the Finance Committee, I thought that it would be helpful to revisit that. And then The third item were some actions that could be considerations for the Board of Selectmen, and if we can establish a unified view between the Finance Committee and the Board on what would allow vocalizing support for the reconsidered budget. Of course, at this point, it's hypothetical. We don't exactly know what it looks like. But so I was just going to go over some of those ideas that we talked about in the meeting. So the first item, the reconsidered budget, what we did was we essentially, I laid out three options. Two of them were presented last week at the school committee meeting. So, one option being no change at all. The district comes back with the same budget that was presented, and it's, re-voted upon. The second option is what I'm calling the full cuts, which would be $781,000 that was discussed last week at the school committee. And then I presented a third option, which ill-defined at this point, but what I'm calling a compromise budget that would fall somewhere in between. And so we went around, all 7 members of the Finance Committee were in attendance at the meeting today. And basically, as it came out, there were some caveats, which I should state, that concern about declining enrollment, desire to see efficiencies, so those were sort of stated with some of these views. But basically where it landed was that 3 out of the 7 committee members voted for the no cuts scenario. So essentially the budget as it was presented and voted upon obviously would require an override support. And then the other 4 basically landed in the compromise bucket. I thought it was interesting that no one was pushing for the full budget cut, the 781, which is essentially 7.35 FTE cut in terms of the impact on headcount for the school, and that was all laid out in the meeting last week in terms of the specific program items. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that would be helpful maybe for consideration of the board here.
Can I ask a question, Ben?
Sure.
The compromise budget, I'm sure you had probably 2 or 3 versions from the 3 or 4 versions from the 3 or 4 people that were suggesting that. That would still require an override, correct? Or is there other? Yeah.
Yes, and actually that was thank you for raising that, Peter, because there was nothing specific in terms of what was proposed as far as a compromise budget, just simply falling in between the 2 that were presented last week. There was some acknowledgement that sort of would be the superintendent and the district would have to kind of figure out what that might look like. But yes, it would still require an override. Essentially anything less than the $781K in cuts. So I think that's helpful. Some of the other caveats were around, class size data and, seeking efficiencies. I do think it's important to point out that the full cut scenario is 69% of those sections that have under 10 students would either be eliminated or consolidated. So that is basically the target in terms of the of what was presented in the cuts package last week. So I think it's a little bit hard to rectify that or sort of account for desires for efficiencies and declining enrollment references when that's basically what was addressed in the full cuts package proposed. So that's a consideration. Any other questions on the reconsidered budget?
I have no questions on the reconsidered budget. So one of the things I think that is important, and I know that when you got up to the microphone at town meeting, I had mentioned discussing excess capacity, because I think that it's important for people to realize, we're hearing a lot of the pushback about Essex didn't pass the override, but I don't think people realize that we passed Article 4, which was the overall ask, and Manchester passed theirs at 3.94% and Essex is 3.93%. So we are, right in line with the actual budget ask. We're not trying to pay our share. It's the override, which was the $289,000. But I think excess capacity conversation is important. And since you're the finance professional, if you could explain that we had to use $435,000 in excess capacity, which takes away all of our ability to fund that, which doesn't even touch that override. I think that's important for people to understand, that this wasn't just we're going to fund the budget and not look for any other source of income. We did fund 435 that we're not discussing, that will bring up our tax rate, and that we don't have a new growth reset until the new tax rate is set, which is November, December. So this isn't a conversation, this is about the override. This isn't a conversation where we can say, well, why can't we just find some more money and fund it? If we had a magical vault of money, this wouldn't be a conversation. We would just fund the school budget and we would all move on as happy. I think where I land is that the Board of Selectmen has to look at this from the entire town standpoint, the town as a whole. We have multiple budgets to work with. We have a police chief that would like 3 full-time employees. We have a DPW that would like 2 full-time employees. We have all different departments that we have to consider. And the school is 50% of our overall, we have a $20 million budget, roughly. 50% of that goes to the school, $10 million. And as you know, we keep repeating that we starve our own town budgets. And I think Ben, from all of the finance committee meetings that I sat in on, 95% of the time was spent talking about the school and 5% was talking about our town budget. And to what point does that get the spread, so to speak, get wider and wider? We're at 10 million and 10 million. Then are we going to be at 11 million and 9 million? And how do we do that within, squeezing every department to the point where we're filing for bankruptcy or our town's in receivership? I don't know. But I think it's important to note that we did use all of our excess capacity to be able to fund just the portion that we funded, in the 289 is the part that's out of reach. And our only option without an override would be free cash. And if we did that, we're putting ourselves right back into that negative hole for next year, which is how we're here now. So if you could explain excess capacity so that everyone watching this after understands it and knows where all these funds came from and that we're not just trying to avoid our responsibility.
Well, let me first caveat that Jeff Zular would probably be a little bit more technically versed in making that explanation, but I know enough to be dangerous here, which is basically, the way that I think a lot of people were sort of asking the question of, well, how is the 289,000 actually determined? And so when we layer all of the budget expenditures in terms of the town's budget, what we can do is to determine actually what falls over the tax levy at the Prop 2.5. We are allowed to use excess capacity, which has accumulated, which is basically through the laws of Proposition 2.5 that have accumulated but not actually utilized in past years. And that amount was the 450,000 figure. So to your point, if the budget is adjusted to account for the 200 or to reduce to eat the 289,000 in expenditures, which is actually 781 because of the apportionment for the school, we still have used all the levy capacity, which I think is part of your point here.
Right, and that our mill rate's going to go up regardless. So the taxes are going to go up. From we were at 1570, we're now at 1388. We're going up, whether we pass an override or not. Is just my point. It means nothing other than I want people to understand this isn't about we don't want our taxes to go up. Our taxes are going up. It's to what extent do we want those taxes to go up? That's, I guess, where I'm going with this.
Yep.
And I guess just because, again, you don't deal with government on Facebook, but because I do read the things, I want to just say that it's become unfortunate that as a body that are elected officials that deal with such a large budget, and we have to consider all of our departments. For me, this is not personal and it's not emotional. It's strictly numbers, and it's what we can afford. And that's how I go with this. For me, it's very data driven and numbers driven. And I don't like the full cuts package. I don't like any cuts. I don't want to see us cutting any teachers. I want to, it's the same conversation we've had for 4 years is let's find efficiencies. Maybe instead of 10 classrooms with 1 kid, we have 10 classrooms with 3 kids. I don't know what that picture looks like. I don't do that job. I'm simply saying that it's not personal, it's not emotional, it's data driven, and it's an equation that we have to solve. And we can't solve it this way because we're going to be back at this override problem year after year, not being able to afford it if we continue to grow at this rate.
So Ruth, I just do want to say, because I was on the school committee for many years, this is a given. We should be looking for efficiencies every single budget season. When I first was on the school committee, the initial budget would come out at 10 or 11%. And, we'd all go, whoa, what are you doing? And it would eventually come down. And we need to be able to look at efficiencies. We need to see whether or not we have enough students in a class. Is it a class that we need to maintain? That should just be a given for any school anywhere in the state. This is not foreign. I know that we would love to be able to give our children everything, but I just don't know that it's feasible unless some wonderful person comes in and decides to pay for it for the next, 10 years.
That would be lovely.
It's just, for me, it's efficiency, and we should be looking for that in every department, and the school is a department.
I agree. But you have constituents in every different area. So when you have, no matter whether you talk about art or science or French class, you're going to have constituents that are passionate about that particular thing. So if you use it as a tool that, I'm going to use French because French came up as one of the areas that we would have to look for efficiencies in. So if you mention French, anybody that takes French, those students are going to come out, the parents are going to come out, those teachers are going to come out. It's, I guess, sad for me that we're using a particular category so that we receive, this kind of feedback versus just saying, let's look for efficiencies and maybe we need to look at this a little bit more strategic so that it's not about, the scare tactic and the frenzy that this is creating. So that's, I guess, my point.
Let me just also say that I also am not emotional about this, and it's purely data-driven, and it's interesting for me because it's a real problem that we need to solve for the town, for both towns, and for the school. And, I think there's when you talk about the overall affordability for the town of Essex, the factors that go into that are what is the actual assessment growth rate over time? And that's what I wanted to, because we've had discussions about 2.5, 3, 3.5, et cetera. I wanted to get sort of a range of reasonableness in this conversation. I won't go through all of the, specific ranges that people gave, but for those that gave a range, I took the midpoint, and for those that gave a target number, I took that, and then I took the average. It was 3 1/8% in terms of the viewpoint, the collective viewpoint of the Finance Committee. And I know we've talked about a target rate of 2.5. We live within Proposition 2.5. We've talked about a target of 3.5. Sometimes that's been contested as, well, that's a cap. It's not a target. I know that we've been sort of around the block on this conversation, but I did want to revisit it. I also wanted to say that the assessment growth over the last 5 years for the district is right at that 3 1/8%. And so essentially, it's an apportionment issue, and I know I keep saying this and I bang my head on the table, but that is the issue for Essex. And so that sort of gets into what are the ideas in terms of solving the longer term picture, and we need to revisit, I think, the apportionment issue. And I kind of laid out some ideas, and then I had the committee react to them. One of them was reopening the regional agreement to address the formula. And there were a couple of sort of, cautious flags that went up on that, but the apportionment formula is defined in there. I won't sort of go into details, but I think there is a way. I mean, the fact that it floats year to year, even with a 3-year smoothing, still it creates incredible volatility for both towns, but in particular Essex, because we're the smaller share. So, the regional agreement, consideration of a third-party review. Jody actually pointed out that the Hamilton-Wenham agreement has a stipulation in it of doing an operating audit if you're going to reopen the regional agreement. And Jody, correct me if I'm wrong, if I got this, wrong. But I mean, I think it's probably good hygiene to do that anyway, from a financial standpoint. And Pam and Teresa have mentioned that there are reviews that get done. I think it's probably worth having more communication around those reviews, but I think it would be very helpful for all parties to have an external sort of view of this. So, and there was sort of a lot of agreement, but the devil's in the details in terms of what this would look like. There was some discussion about concern of collaboration meetings, that they're sort of done behind closed doors, and people would like to see a more open meeting format. So that I'm just going to put that under the category of governance in terms of the regional agreement, and should there be some joint meetings between the boards of selectmen from both towns? Should there be a joint, finance committee? Maybe it happens once, maybe it happens a couple of times during the course of the year. I think, so we have less of sort of each town kind of operating in a vacuum with respect to the own dynamics that are happening in each town. Calls for greater transparency, simply an acknowledgement of that. We didn't get into specifics of what that actually means. And then the other idea that was raised was around debt mapping. This is less to do with the actual budget that we're talking about, and more about, as we think about timing around construction going forward, is there sort of an optimal window based on what the overall layers of debt for the town look like, and what's rolling off and what's going on, and projects. And I've referenced that in the past, but I think that's also a helpful thing to do. So those were the ideas that were put out there. That's more, again, thinking about longer term. The reconsider budget is more kind of a short-term issue. But I think it was a helpful meeting, and I think that it is. Some of these ideas, if we can put some flesh around them, may make it easier for, our town leaders collectively, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, to stand up in front of the town saying we support this reconsider budget with what it looks like, because we would have these other actions potentially in motion or teed up going forward. So
Perfect, thank you, Ben. So for the board, to the apportionment comment, I had a Board of Select member from Manchester reach out to me actually several months ago, and we had a conversation about the possibility of reopening the regional agreement and taking a look at the possibility of a static number that would hold reasonable for both towns. And we chatted about it a little bit and said, this is something we should talk about. Let's get, beyond town meeting. The problem I think that we're facing is, if you look back at apportionment over the course of the last 20 years, Essex has been on the high side of apportionment for 11 of those 20 years. And we've been at the highest in the last 5, and this year is the highest ever. So it's why it's pinching us the hardest and hurting the worst. The day after town meeting, we actually reached out to Manchester, and Brendan and I intend on meeting with the town administrator and the chair of the Board of Selectmen. The chair was actually going to be on a 2-week vacation, so she was going to get back to us, I believe, this week to organize a time to talk about the regional agreement, and just to kind of put our toe in the water and see where they are at, as we are obviously a 2-town, partnership. So as for that, we had started looking into that. We have readdress that. We're going to meet and start talking about that. So that is something we are working on. As far as the governance of, collaboration meetings or whatever with that, I agree with you. And I've been saying for a long time that I think Manchester and Essex, together we form the district. We're a partnership, 2 towns. And I think that personally, all the meetings when the school committee meets with the finance committee and the board of selectmen in Manchester and Essex, it should be one large meeting. I know that that's not as easy to organize, but it's something I've been asking for the last couple of years. They haven't worked out, but I think it's important so that we can all be in the same room, hearing the same questions, having the same dynamic, the same conversation. So certainly I don't think we need to be at every one of our meetings, but if the school committee is coming in to present to one town, I think it should be presenting to both partners at the same time. So I agree with all of that. As far as a hard and fast number, that's where you lose me. I feel like that's a moving target. I don't think that you can hold it. It was just like when we said 3.5 and I was like, whoa, we can't publish that in any document, because what if that's not something you can achieve? And I think that that's going to be dependent on what the budget looks like, what inflation is, what the economy looks like, what is new growth, what if we're in a recession, what if the enrollment drops again. I know these are a lot of what ifs, but you have to plan for those what ifs. So I'm not somebody that wants to give you a hard and a fast number. I would just rather it come year by year, work with the school committee. And I agree, this is not a fun process. And I myself have had a lot of sleepless nights. So I would rather have a number that is a target and we can just live within. But I know, and I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think part of the challenge is that for planning purposes, when the school is determining budget cuts and they're using an assumption around a target number, those, if you used 2.5%, there was an example that was given with the pie charts, which are assuming different target numbers. So I agree with you. I think in the long term, particularly with so many moving factors, you shouldn't be bound to a hard number. I do want to go back to the apportionment piece, though. I believe the number was 37, just a hair over 37% in terms of what the Essex, portion is of the overall assessment to both towns. If that number were fixed for a period of time, could be 5, 7, 10 years, and then adjusted. And we plan for that adjustment. We also have a sense of how that adjustment's going to affect the town sort of incrementally each year, because you know what the underlying trends are. You have the data, you have the enrollment data relative to the 2 towns, et cetera. You then could pre-fund that liability of when that adjustment is made, similar to what we do for OPEB. It's a future liability. We put money away, each year to fund that future liability. I just think the whole issue of every year, we struggle, and for the last 4 years, it's been because we've been on the wrong side of apportionment for the town of Essex. It's made it really difficult. I just think we need some sort of mechanism in terms of revisiting that formula. So, that to me, it's just so clear that that's the cause of our pain. And I agree with what Alva was saying. We should always be expecting efficiencies to be reviewed on every town and every entity's, budgeting process should be, looking at that.
It's a difficult decision. Do you cut sports? Do you cut, an event? What do you cut? And it's hard, and I understand that. But we also have to understand that it still needs to be fair. We can't be doing overrides on a regular basis. It's just not feasible. And it's not even feasible for Manchester. If Manchester was having overrides every year, they wouldn't want it either. It's, it's not just because we're the poor Essex people on this side of the river. So, we have to be able to communicate. There may come a time when they've done everything for the efficiencies, and I'm sure they have, but it has to be shown. You have to be able to articulate what has been done.
Agree.
I'm maybe concerned, I don't know, about if we open up the agreement, what else might be in there? Because when you open up the agreement, everything is open.
Yep.
And there may be some things that make sense that should be changed that is not in Essex favor at all. I don't know. I don't know the agreement at all. So that needs to be looked at maybe in advance before we do that, because we want to make sure that, you know, we're not just paying Peter to, you know, pay Paul, you know? So,
No, that was definitely, I don't know if we can get a copy of it that we can take a look at, because I know that when I was on the school committee, I had it, but I don't have it currently.
Yeah, it's right, if you just go to the school district website.
Right.
It's still on there, okay.
And you go to school committee, there is a copy of it right there.
Great.
I mean, I just want to acknowledge this is a, you know, it's a no-win situation for everybody, and I think, you know, what's tricky about this is that the, you know, the majority of voters in this town voted no, and which is why I think, you know, bringing the budget back unchanged is problematic politically, because, you know, there's people, you know, residents need to be heard on this message. I also think the, you know, the full array of cuts may be too far, but maybe not. And so I think, you know, we have to kind of look in between. This is when it gets into program decisions specifically. As a finance committee person, I just feel like that's not in our realm. It's what's the bottom line here, and so.
And so while we're on this topic, I have just a couple of other things. With respect to how the mechanics play out, since we know we're not going to get a vote on a reconsidered budget until June 6th, if that comes and it's something that still requires an override, the general laws require us to actually get that language, ballot language with a number in it, to the town clerk 35 days in advance of the election. So that puts you necessarily into the month of July. Certainly you could post the town meeting within that time frame, because that's 14 days. I bring that up because it's going to involve the commissioner of the DOE, because once we hit July 1 without a budget, the commissioner will have to probably say, okay, until this is resolved, the district's on a 1/12 budget. And then if that didn't pass and it goes to a joint town meeting that's organized by the school district, that I'm sure is going to go well into August. So that's just a little bit about mechanics. And then finally, unless there's something else, I know that there was a lot of discussion tonight and discussion in the past about the data request that was made by the Selectmen and separately by Chairman Perrine. And for my purposes, I need to know whether it's something that you want special counsel to keep working on, and if you do, it would probably end up with an appeal of the current position of the district.
Explain what you mean by a current position of the district.
They gave you a redacted document with citations of certain laws and regulations that say why certain data cannot be released. That's where it sits. You know, I was able to get the course catalog and for at least the high school match some things up. We don't know whether the district agrees or disagrees with that, although they do have that entire body of data. And so I left it with special counsel that he shouldn't do anything more on it unless and until the board decides that you want him to do anything more on that topic.
I say we table that because I'm waiting for another piece of data. As soon as I get that piece of data, I'll bring that back to you.
okay.
Does that work for the board?
Yes.
Great. I don't know if there was anything else on the school topic for tonight.
No? Let me see.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you for coming, Ben. You've had a busy day.
Plus work.
Yeah. Wait, we have real paying day jobs?
But this was your
How do we have time for that?
So continuing on with my report, the town clerk hiring update.
Or is it just an example? I don't think I've done this.
So I'm pleased to announce that an offer was made to Marie Falzani for the position of town clerk. She has accepted that offer. And she came in today to do some initial paperwork, and once she gets through the standard checks, she's going to be working with the outgoing town clerk who's retiring to start learning the office. And so that was really all I wanted to say, because the last time the board met, you did not know whether there was an acceptance of the offer, and that has been done. The next thing is the transfer station solid waste compactor replacement contract award. The town did receive 2 bids for the compactors. One is for the solid waste compactor, which is the large machine that sits within the building at the transfer station. And then we had 2 possible add alternates, which would be 1 or 2 additional smaller compactors that would be placed on concrete pads adjacent to the building, so that when recycling tonnage increases, and we expect that with the pay-as-you-throw program, there's a much better way to keep the recycling crushed down and under control. So with respect to the bid that was the lower of the 2 bids from Reaction Distributing, Inc., we have been waiting for the Board of Public Works to fully vet the proposal to make sure that their proposal met spec. And in fact, it does meet spec. And I asked the Board of Public Works lead on this, Nick Ellis, if it would make sense to just memorialize some things that were not fully nailed down in their proposal, and he agreed. And so I've put together something that would reference a discussion I had in writing with this contractor, that they'll agree to several things, and they've already said that they will do so, and that makes the Board of Public Works much more comfortable with the arrangement. So knowing that the Board of Public Works is comfortable if we got those things ironed out, which we did, my recommendation would be for the board to award the contract for the base bid and 2 alternates, add alternate 1 and add alternate 2, to Reaction Distributing, Inc., knowing that we still have $60,000 in the funding that was put aside by town meeting to pay for the concrete pads that are necessary for the trenching work and the wiring work, underground trenching, to feed power to these new compactors.
Brendan, the email chain attachment to the contract, that's perfectly legal document and all that.
Yes, and I've made it clear on the notice to proceed that that's now a formal attachment.
Okay.
You got that? You got all the attachments?
In your package, yeah.
Are there any other questions? No. I will entertain a motion to vote to award the compactor replacement contract to Reaction Distributing, Inc., in the amount of $178,472 with add alternate 1 and add alternate 2.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, thank you. So the way this works is I will send this out for the contractor's, the vendor's signature, along with evidence of their insurance. Once we have that, I'll just ask the board to come by the office and sign. The next item is the fact that for the last 10 years, we're on the 10th year of a contract with the YMCA for provision of summer camp services to the town. Town meeting just authorized the board to enter into another 5-year term for the provision of both summer camp services and youth and adult enrichment services. Now, of course, similar to other things we talked about tonight, that doesn't mean that the YMCA can just assume the next contract. So it requires that a request for proposals be put together, which I've started to do, And I just wanted to run that by the board, make sure that you were ready for that process to begin. And what I could do is bring to the board at your next meeting a draft of the request for proposals, knowing that it's not this summer that's in play, it would be the summer of '24 and forward. Is that all right? Do you want me to set that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
The next is the third-party ambulance billing agreement renewal. We have been using a company known as, to get to it here, Comstar for, and they're just annual contracts. So the value of the contract is under the bid threshold because they're not multi-year contracts. I checked in with the fire chief, and he still feels that Comstar is giving the town good service. So once again, I recommend that the board approve a successor contract for 1 year with Comstar.
I will entertain a motion to sign a successor agreement contract with Comstar for fiscal year 2024, effective July 1, 2023.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get this. That's here. No, that's here.
That's easy.
Now I want to update the board on the Apple Street roadbed elevation and culvert replacement project. And there are a number of things that we need to go over tonight. First, the board is probably aware of the fact that the order of conditions from the Essex Conservation Commission that had been issued for the Apple Street project was appealed by a number of people, and that appeal is still pending in front of the Department of Environmental Protection. There was a site visit that DEP made on May 17th. Several questions were asked at the site visit, and the DEP reviewer assigned to this case had a chance to ask questions. Our legal counsel was present, as well as counsel for the appellants. With respect to this unanticipated situation, in order for our engineering firm and their wetlands experts to deal with the appeal, a change order to the contract will be necessary. We have sufficient funds to do this because town meeting approved a cash match of $80,000, which was a little bit more than the 25% required, which means we have about $5,000 in cash that's not pledged as part of the 75%. In addition, we have my time that's been put in since the beginning of the project, which can be counted as an in-kind match.
Sorry.
That's okay. And further, we've put in several $1,000s with respect to town council from the beginning of this project until now. So I asked the project coordinator for the grant from the MVP program whether my time and the legal counsel funds that we've invested would also be counted, and she said yes, we just need to go through a process with her. So the amount of money that the our engineering firm, along with their wetland subcontractor, Du Bois and King, comes to a total of $11,000, and that will get through the entire appeal process because there's more to come. So again, we have the money for that, and what I'm asking tonight, since in fact we've already waded into that territory, is I'm asking for the board to consider approval of that change order with TEC.
Any discussion, questions, problems? No? So I will entertain a motion to approve the contract with TEC in the amount of $11,000.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, I can tell you that we are still in the midst of the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act review process. The MEPA office is conducting that review. The MEPA office extended its review timeline until tomorrow, actually, and we should have a MIPA certificate by early June. The DEP wetlands appeal and the MIPA process are intertwined, and we're making sure that all the documents being requested in one forum are also provided to the reviewers in the other forum. So that's something that's ongoing. With respect to the fact that the easements that were sought by the town, by the selectmen at town meeting, not having been passed, in both of the, this is for them to sign?
Peter? Yeah.
In both of the forums where we've been discussing the project, which are MIPA and the DEP appeal process, the question keeps coming back as to whether the town, through the selectmen, intends to take a second look at the, trying to get the easements approved. And I can say that sometimes it takes much more visual tools to make sure that everybody at the town meeting understands the nature of what's being asked about. It's true that we had the easements on file with the town clerk, the easement plans, and we had the easement plans up on the website, but some people that came to town meeting probably did not get a chance to really visualize that. So it's something I wanted to talk to the board about, because I keep telling people that ask about it that it's up to the board, and I don't know yet whether it's something you intend to do. I would recommend it, and with the appropriate video equipment, we could illustrate what's being asked for, I think, a lot better in the fall.
So
I think
I'm fully committed to the project. I mean, I think that it's important that we consider the safety of the entire community. So I would like to see it go forward in the fall. Peter, you agree?
Yes.
Alva?
Yes.
Okay.
Great, so we'll plan for that. And also, the board is aware that we have asked the planning board to hear the matter about the scenic road, which is something that comes under their purview under the general laws. In speaking with our consultants and with town council, that hearing that right now is tentatively scheduled for June 21st, it would probably not be productive to hold that at this time. The reason I say that is that it's possible that the DEP appeals process would require us to reconfigure things on the ground. And if we go in front of the planning board to get permission potentially for one particular configuration, yet there are changes on the ground that won't come until who knows when, because the DEP process is lengthy, then you would have to go back before the planning board to get an amendment. That doesn't seem like a very productive thing to do, and my recommendation is to postpone the planning board, where I could contact the chair and say, please stand down on the 21st before they advertise it. You find out exactly what comes out of the appeal process and out of the MIPA process, and then move forward knowing full well, because people at the planning board might say, well, what will happen if you get some kind of different result out of these processes? How do we know that what we're potentially approving is still going to be in that form when it gets through all the processes? So does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So that's the questions I have on Apple Street and the report on that. The next item is the North Shore IT Collaborative Memorandum of Understanding. We currently operate under an MOU. It's us and I think 6 other communities that town of Danvers anchors, and we've greatly benefited from that relationship. And right now we're actually remote computing directly from Danvers. So the servers that populate our users' Windows desktops aren't even in the building anymore. That first two-year agreement is going to expire June 30, and I believe that we will have a final form of renewal MOU for you before June 30th. I thought that I was going to get from the collaborative that it was ready for tonight, and I do have a draft but I'm not getting a green light. So I just wanted to let you know that, and you could either,
I could take a vote to
Yeah,
sign it
'cause
outside
it's-
of a meeting.
it's pretty
It's straightforward.
cut
We
and
do
dry,
this
yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
So I will take a motion to have the chairman sign the MOU with the North Shore IT Collaborative Group outside of a meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
the Mass DOT 133 sidewalk project and the Goodwin Court crosswalk issue. As you know, this DOT, between now and the end of the calendar year, is planning to put either new sidewalks or refresh the current sidewalks between Water Street and the Gloucester city line.
At their expense.
Yes, at no expense to the town. One of the issues that's come up is that the crosswalk that currently crosses approximately from Goodwin Court over to Lufkin Street on the other side of 133 is being proposed for elimination by the DOT. And that's because whenever they do a project where they're coming through and doing something new, they have to make sure that everything along the way meets current standards. That crosswalk where it sits today does not meet this standards, and they looked at a number of potential new configurations, and they have not yet come to resolution on whether they can move it to an acceptable location. Although the DOT did say they will go back one more time and try to find a location. We know that residents of Goodwin Court have been accustomed to crossing the street in that location, and they were able to come on a meeting, a remote meeting, where the chairman was also on the line with me. And they said, you know, we understand that it might have to change location, but we don't want it to go away completely. Then go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, what standards does it meet? It's a crosswalk. I mean,
Sight lines.
Sideline.
It got put in, they don't even have a good record of how or why it got put in, but all of their, and I even asked, can you stop the project prior to Lufkin Street, past that area and restart the project, leaving whatever the existing site, and they said they can't even do that. We've been really brainstorming. So what they put on the table was, we're going to try to find a location for this crosswalk to move to, so that they actually do have a continued crosswalk.
would they put a crosswalk on the other side of the street to Goodwin Court from wherever they relocated it to?
No, it would be just a
Crosswalk that goes.
90 degrees across the street, and the people might have to walk up the street a little and then cross and walk back down.
And I wonder whether or not it was put there, maybe at one point, the Gloucester kids from Essex who were choiced into Gloucester, maybe.
Yeah, it's been there for a long time, is what they said.
Yeah, I was going to say DOT was pretty sure that it sounded like the bus company put the crosswalk in because they had no record of this.
Back
so.
when you could, or
Could
maybe they just
spray
did,
paint the
I don't
road,
know.
yeah.
You would think
So-
that a crosswalk going to nowhere, but the street would be worse than.
I raised that, and they said they might be able to deal with that standard, but the sightline standards, they can't
Yeah.
necessarily. So the thing that the board needs to talk about is the fact that if they cannot find that other location, and the town insists that that crosswalk stay where it is, they said the entire project would not be done. They either have to do it to standards, which means elimination or moving it, or they're not going to do it at all. And the residents in the area suggested that if you can't accommodate a crosswalk, you shouldn't do the project at all. And I said, I need to bring that back to the selectmen, because, of course, you could look at it as the greater good would be that you get the project done minus that particular crosswalk. And I said, it's a selectman's decision to discuss this.
Well, and I think so, kind of rewinding time and giving you a historical perspective, this project was brought to us from a resident who has actually been working with the DOT district administration for, I want to say over 16 years, trying to get this project done. And he brought it to me less than a year ago. We were actually pretty shocked at how fast this unfolded. So he brought it to me less than a year ago and said, I've been reaching out to Senator Tarr's office, and every time I reach out saying these sidewalks are a hazard, they're a liability, this is a problem, the senator's office said, work with local government. So he reached out to me. We set a meeting with DOT. We had a room full of, actually Senator Tarr was there, I was there, Brendan was there, and they brought quite a few residents with them that were passionate about the sidewalk replacement project. So while I respect the safety of the 3 residents on Goodwin Court, we're talking about sidewalks from Water Street to the Gloucester line that are in really bad shape. Not only are they a trip hazard, they're cracked. Some of them, I know down by Lufkin Street where I live, there's an actual sinkhole with a orange barrel in the hole so that you run around it, and there's no room between the guardrail and the barrel, so you run into the street. I mean, I think there's major safety concerns, so I'm all for continuing forward with the project, even if we do lose the crosswalk, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And I think it should be pointed out as well, there are plenty of long stretches of Route 133 that have no crosswalks.
No crosswalks, yeah.
So it's not really a right, although I understand that they see it as a long-standing convenience and a long-standing safety aid.
I know mothers that think that corner is so dangerous, they actually park their car at the street and wait for the bus. One's
Yep.
in the room with us tonight.
Oh, I do that for my daughter's convenience.
So with respect to that, then I will get back to the residents and let them know that the board has no intent to cancel the project if DOT cannot work out a...
But DOT was very helpful in wanting to find a solution, and I think they were even trying to get that line of sight of 35 feet to like squeak it in there and say maybe it's, even if it's 34.9, we're going to make it happen. Kind
He's going to try
of. He
real
was
hard.
really trying, so I think we're in okay shape, but we don't want to make a promise that we can't deliver. But I think the sidewalk project's important.
So anywhere they put the crosswalk in that general vicinity, the residents of Goodwin Court will accept that?
They seemed very
they seemed
amenable
like
to
they
that.
were receptive. Yep. I think that the location would be Haskell Court. It sounded like they were going to move it up towards Schooner's Market,
Yeah.
and they were like, "We'll just walk in front of the Taladoris' property and get to the crosswalk." So,
And then finally, in my report, we are almost ready to submit the grant application for the improvements to the Centennial Grove. That would be a $500,000 grant application. Realize that the value of the replacement of the Folsom Pavilion is another $500,000. $150 is coming from the town for materials, and $350 is coming from a group of private professional volunteers led by Dan Mayer and Mayer Tree Services. So that's $1 million project right there. And there's also a match of 50 that was put up by the town meeting. And we're hopeful that a match of 75,000 will come from a legislative earmark. So there's over $1 million in a project in the offing for the state's investment of 500,000 through this grant program. We are looking at the anchor part of this grant being the installation of the restrooms with flush toilets in the Picnic Grove area adjacent to the new pavilion. We've looked through that, and it looks like the best way to do it would be with a modular building. Believe it or not, that's going to be about $300,000, and we also priced it a built on site, and it came to a similar amount. The difference here is with modular, we can put right in the grant application, here's the plans and specs. Otherwise, we would have to hire an architect, which we don't have money to do, have them do a design and put that in the grant application. So it looks like modular is the way to go there. It will also feature a potable well down at the cottage so that there'll be year-round water there. Reconfiguration of the bathrooms at the cottage, a heating system in the cottage, new garage doors on the storage garage that's near the cottage, some site lighting, two new docks, things of that nature. But certainly most of the money is going to be in that new restroom facility with its own tight tank that will be pumped out on a regular basis. So we're ready to go. We've got 8 letters of support. We've got collaboration with the YMCA. We've got matching funds. And so the last step would be that the board would vote to submit the application, and there's a specific vote that needs to be taken.
I will entertain a motion that the board vote to authorize the chairman and the town administrator to electronically submit a rural and small town development fund grant application through the Commonwealth One Stop for Growth portal for renovations and improvements at the Centennial Grove, with the grant request of $500,000 representing a portion of the overall project, which has a value of approximately $1.155 million, all in recognition of the furtherance of significant community development and economic development goals outlined in the town's strategic plan and by the Economic Development Committee.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I ask a question, though?
Absolutely.
As far as this grant application, is there stipulations that we have to follow, certain parking rules or anything
No,
like that?
we were very upfront, and we say it in several places in the application that Centennial Grove is generally a residents-only facility. We're saying that the benefit to the public, which would be anyone from Massachusetts or anywhere else for that matter, would be their participation in the YMCA or whoever gets the contract next time around for summer camp and for youth and adult enrichment services, for participation in sports leagues that do play down there at the Field of Dreams, and for rentals. So if there's somebody from out of town, out of state, whatever, who wants to rent either the picnic grove or the cottage, now that we have real bathroom facilities, if we get this, then they're going to benefit and be able to utilize the property in that way. There's nothing in the grant requirements that say that it has to then be completely opened up to the state's rules and opened up to everyone. Other grant programs like improving a boat ramp, they say that, and in fact it becomes a state ramp. That is not the case here, and we've put it in black and white, in the interest of full disclosure in the grant application. So if they fund it, they're funding it with those caveats written right in there.
Good.
Alva, did you vote in favor of the grant, of submitting the grant? Oh, you did, okay, perfect. So, under the appointments, we have several appointments. I'm gonna go through these by title because there are several on here that I can't vote on. So I will entertain a motion to vote to approve the ADA coordinator for 1 year and the Affordable Housing Trust members listed for 2 years, as well as the building inspector for 1 year, building inspector's assistant for 1 year, Community Preservation Committee, Conservation Commission for 3 years, Council on Aging for 3 years, Economic Development Committee for 3 years, electrical inspector's assistant, and the fence viewers, and I'm going to stop there.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Peter, will you take the next local emergency planning committee?
Where are we?
Page 4, halfway down?
Yep.
Or,
Okay. So I am, no wait, I still don't see us. Which one did we?
Alva,
end
do
at?
you want to take it?
Oh, the plumbing and gas? Is that where I'm starting?
There's several. So under local emergency planning committee, because I'm on there, so if you guys want to make that motion.
I'll take a motion to appoint to.
Just say the appointments as listed.
Appointments as listed for the local emergency planning committee, plumbing and gas inspector, plumbing and gas inspector's assistant for 1 year. Further.
Keep going.
Police officer, part-time, 1 year. Shellfish deputy for 3 years. Strategic planning committee for 1 year.
Grab the last two.
That's it.
Do the town council and veterans.
Oh, town council for 1 year. Veterans graves officer for 1 year.
And then, do you want to second it?
Second.
And
All
then,
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
and I'll be in favor of all of the ones except the ones that say Ruth Perrine and David Perrine. I'll abstain from those. Okay, so the last license we have is actually going back to page 3, and this is probably going to require a little bit of discussion. So under licensing, the common victualer's license, Mayflower Confections, Jocelyn Pierce, manager, 162 Main Street. I'm excited to welcome Jocelyn. I'm excited to have Mayflower in town. That's super exciting. The only issue is, as we've been doing with other businesses, so if you read the business license requirements, if a business in the town is your own name, so if it's Ruth Perrine Bookkeeping, I don't need a business license because it's my own name. If your business is anything other than your own name, you need a business license in the town. So we need to approve a common victualer's license. We already know that she's going to be coming before us as the local licensing board for a one-day alcohol when she opens. And as we've required with all of the other businesses that do one-day alcohols, we require them to have a business license so that we can make sure that all the, checks and balances have taken place. So I will entertain a motion to sign the common victualer's license contingent upon Jocelyn or Mayflower Confections receiving a business license with the town clerk's office.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can you pass that to Peter? Okay. Some reminders. Tuesday, May 23rd, 6 p.m., public hearing concerning the Manchester Essex Regional School Committee's reconsideration of the proposed fiscal year 2024 operating budget, which it will be at the Manchester Essex Regional High School. Is that going to be in the cafeteria?
Currently, yes.
Okay, cafeteria. Wednesday, May 24th, 2023, 6 p.m., presentation of Selectmen Citizenship Award at the Manchester Essex Regional High School. Wednesday, May 24th at 7 p.m., joint planning board Board of Selectmen meeting concerning the ongoing zoning bylaw review project.
Is that here?
That's here. Third floor, that will be televised. Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at 8:30 a.m., special meeting to consider a personnel matter here at the Town Hall Auditorium. Monday, May 29th, 2023 at 11 a.m., join the Essex Veterans Association for their annual Memorial Day service at Shepherd Memorial Park. And last, the next regular Board of Selectmen's meeting will take place on Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m., third floor auditorium of the Town Hall, 30 Martin Street. And I saw Town Administrator lean forward, so I think he probably wants me to clarify that the special meeting on Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at 8:30 a.m., it does say special meeting to consider a personnel matter. That will be held in executive session. So the only way that would be outside is if the personnel, the employee prefers to go into open session. That will be voted. We will leave executive session and go into open session should that employee choose to do that. So at this point, that meeting is planned in executive session. So those are all of the reminders. The last piece of business on our agenda, as we always do after the elections, is to consider a vote to reorganize the board. So traditionally, this ends up being the third year selectman that, wants an opportunity to be the chair of the board. And if it's not a third year, it's a senior selectman that might want an opportunity. So this is where we put it on the table and we talk about who would like that to be the next chair.
I love the consistency, and I think Brendan does as well. If you're willing to continue, Ruth.
I would love to hear from Alva. I am willing to continue, but I want to make sure that all board members are fine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All yours.
So then I am thrilled to continue to stay your chair, and I think we still have a lot of work to do, and I look forward to leading our awesome group.
Thank you.
So, as is tradition, public comment. Is there anybody on the line this evening that would like to make public comment? If so, please unmute yourself, say your name and address, and we are potentially having some technical difficulties, so I'm looking to see if anyone unmutes. Okay, I don't see anybody unmuting, so I'm going to go to the room. Is there anybody with public comment in the room this evening? Teresa.
Teresa Whitman, 8 Lufkin Street. Just so that you're clear on that, I know you mentioned the public hearing tomorrow, which does begin at 6 p.m., but just so that you're all clear, we're beginning as a committee at 5:30, just so that we make sure we're organized, have everything working technology-wise, and also for any update to begin any other business. So I just didn't want you to arrive and feel like you were misinformed in some way. Everything else I'll save for tomorrow.
Thank you. Sure.
That again is online, correct? That's online again.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't, James Gist, 35 Apple Street. This isn't a comment, it's a question. I heard you guys say that you're moving forward with the project on 35 Apple Street, or just clarify that for me a little bit.
35?
On widening the street on Apple Street at the other.
So what we discussed was moving forward with putting it on the fall town meeting warrant to talk about eminent domain a second time with visuals, so that the people sitting in town meeting have a clear image of the very small strip of land that abuts the road that we're looking for an easement in to do the construction.
Okay, so we're gonna go back in the fall and have another vote. You guys are gonna provide better
Yes.
visual aids, if you will, to kind of explain what you're trying to do as far as eminent domain?
Correct.
And then we'd have a vote on eminent domain again.
Correct.
Because if we don't get eminent domain, we don't get the grant. Is that correct?
Right now, we're on our 4th grant that we already have that will bring the project through final design and all permitting. That's done.
Yeah.
What you won't potentially get is in the spring, if we wanted to apply for federal and state grants for construction, they're going to say, do you control all of the area that the project needs? And if we said no, I would say no, they would not fund it.
Okay, so it's basically the same debate we had, whatever, a month ago. We're just going to have some visual aids to help the town understand what we're going back to discuss.
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else with Janet?
Hi, Janet Carlson, 24 Apple Street. I'd like to follow up on what James was just asking about by quoting our finance chairman, Ben Buttrick, who said, the residents need to be heard, and he urged not representing the same school budget because the residents have spoken. And the same holds true of the Apple Street roadway project eminent domain article. The residents spoke resoundingly and clearly. They were very clear on the issues at May 1st town meeting. So to represent the article and to come up with an idea that maybe visuals will change how you represent eminent domain, I think is fairly disrespectful of the voters, the will of the people, and the democratic process of town meeting. I think if it strikes me, frankly, as you don't like how the vote turned out. I shouldn't say you. The board doesn't like how the vote turned out, so you want to try again. But I urge you instead to respect the will of the people who have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else with public comment?
Just one more comment, Faith Gist, Apple Street. So I agree also that the town seemed to be really clear about the eminent domain, and there was an overwhelming response to that vote. And what I heard all the members, I think, of the board tonight say is that you're committed with the project going forward. And so I want to remind or make a statement that my understanding in our town is that you're also here to represent the people of the town that pay the taxes. And that doesn't seem to be reflective here. I agree with one thing you said earlier tonight, which is let's not make it emotional. It's data-driven. This is an expensive project. The town has been very clear that we don't like that our government officials will steal our other townspeople's property. People don't want that. And so to continue to push forward and spend money, when we just sat here and talked a lot about the fact that we need money for the school, we need money for the budget, the override, the taxes are going up. There are so many people that live here that don't want their taxes to go up, but yet we're struggling with these big issues. The people on that vote were very, very clear that they didn't want this to move forward, and I just want to point out again on the record, and for anybody that's listening, that we have voted here among this board to spend more money on a project that we did not want. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Is there anybody else that has public comment? Okay. 8:24, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Joan, thank you.